Don't be brief. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Cynthia Hawkins, Gallery Director and Curator at the Bertha Lederer Gallery at SUNY Geneseo. Thank you for joining us for our inaugural artist interviews for the Bertha Lederer online gallery. And as you are all aware, that COVID-19 has changed our daily lives and work lives. This artist interview is one of the silver linings that will provide long-lasting documentation of the art programming at the College Gallery. I am going to roll images of Leslie Stroz paintings while we talk. Okay. So this is the first online exhibition of fall 2020. This new venue will begin with Between the Moors and the Sea by Leslie Stroz. For the sake of transparency, Leslie used to teach at SUNY Geneseo in the art department and exhibited with us in faculty shows, and I think perhaps individually. Did you? I remember photography.
Yeah, that's true.
So, welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. Hello.
Would you start off by telling us a little about your background, why you decided to be an artist, how that came about, and your progress toward this goal?
Okay. Gosh, I think I always wanted to be an artist. For me, growing up, I had dual loves. I had a few different loves. I loved all of the arts, but visual art was one of the first that I just became enamored with. And I was very fortunate to have a mother who really supported my brother and me in whatever endeavor we wanted. So as soon as I showed a proclivity to art, she arranged private oil painting lessons when I was 6 years old, which was pretty incredible. So from the age of 6 through 12, I was really fortunate because of my mother, really, to be able to take private oil painting lessons with a retired illustrator named Hugh Tinman, where I worked. And that was probably the best art training that I had in all of my life, really. If I think back to those years, I don't even think I fully appreciated how rare of an opportunity that was. But I continued with art, taking art all through high school. I started university at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign-Urbana in medical illustration. And then I took a few years off. I moved to the West Coast, lived in California for a while, eventually settled in Tucson. I knew my end game plan was to go to the University of Arizona. So I started there in just illustration and creative writing. I was nearly finished with my degree. And for one of my art history courses, I had to take, I chose to take the art and archaeology of ancient Greece. And I became completely enamored with that culture as well. So I changed my major. I ended up with a dual major in classics and just plain studio art, and continued with that. Eventually went on to get a master's degree in art education, and also did a lot of work continuing always in creative writing. So I did a lot of creative writing in graduate school as well. I did a lot of marrying of the two, of visual art and creative writing, bookmaking, arts education, using all of the arts, theater, music, visual art, and dance. Not that I'm a dancer, but just to help teach the general core curriculum, because I did have that background in teaching English as well. So before I taught at SUNY Geneseo, I taught at SUNY Brockport, and I had a 4-year visiting assistant professorship in the art education program there, working as a liaison between the Arts for Children program and the art department. So I taught courses in drawing, and just general visual art, but I also taught courses in teaching teachers how to teach art or how to teach through the arts. So how to use visual art to teach things like English and history and science and maths. So, so that was my background. I've always loved art. And it wasn't really until I taught at Geneseo that I was able to have the time and the space just to produce my own work. For a long time, it was just teaching people to do art or teaching people how to teach through art. And having that space at SUNY Geneseo teaching oil painting and drawing was fantastic. It was a dream, really. It was a real shame when the department closed due to budget cuts, but my husband is British, and we took that opportunity to move to England. And so since I've been here, I've been able to build a private oil painting studio where I marry teaching with painting. And also since I've been here, I've just completely fallen in love with plein air painting, which is a new thing for me. My art was always very focused on traditional skills, mostly in portraiture was my favorite, traditional skills in painting. So taking a long time to do a painting. And alla prima, for anybody who doesn't know, it means painting all at once. And plein air painting means painting in the open air. So what plein air painting does really is it marries the two things. So you're painting outside, you have to complete a painting, usually within the space of a few hours, although sometimes you can cheat a bit with that and take it back to your studio and do some finishing touches. But it's been a new love for me, really, since I've lived here. And then Cynthia, because we've stayed friends, you were kind enough to invite me to present some of the plein air paintings that I've been working on over the last few years. So that's an introduction, a very lengthy one, but I'll let you, I'm sure you have some questions.
Yeah, so one of the things I find really interesting about these paintings is like within the, in a way, sort of limited scope of the landscape, which we know is not really limited, but within that, there's a very interesting way that you organize your canvas. The compositions seem to me to be pretty, dynamic, in that there's a sort of like a lot of activity that happens and movement through the way you construct your paintings. So do you look for specific I'll say formats, landscape type formats to paint, or are they and are they literal? I mean, is there a sense of like, do you like play with the views that you see to like reshape them for your painting, or is it straight?
Yeah, a lot of sorry, my dog is pitching in if you're in the background. A lot of plein air artists are very creative in terms of, I don't like that lamppost, so I'm not going to put it in. Or they'll move elements. I don't really move elements so much, although I will leave elements out if I feel they're not conducive to the overall composition. But to touch on the first part of your question, I really put a lot of time into the composition. So if I am not, when I choose a scene, it can be anything that moves me. So sometimes it will be, often it'll be the way the light is hitting something. But sometimes, especially we live in the southwest of England, we live in Devon, and it's just absolutely beautiful here. So you can't really leave the house very far without seeing a beautiful scene. That said, when we are viewing the world in a three-dimensional format, it doesn't always translate on paper as effectively. So I try to always think about composition as a teacher. I think the things that I really strove to impress upon my students, which is something I try to practice in my art as well, is it's all about the value, and it's all about having a solid composition. And if you have those two things right, there's a lot of forgiveness if your color's wrong. It's, that doesn't matter as much as long as you have an accurate representation of value that is balanced. And if the composition is appealing. So little things like the composition shouldn't be in the center, the horizon line shouldn't be in the center. I try to think of kind of having all parts of the painting be lively, have a rhythm and a fluidity in the way that the eye moves around the piece. So thank you for noticing that.
I really like this after the hike too. Let me see if we can take a back look at it. Last viewed, and was it here for a minute?
That's one of my favorite ones, I have to say. That every painting has a story, which is true for any art. But the thing that that enchants me the most about plein air painting is that I can look at a painting that I did and I am transported back to that time and place because I'm there when I'm painting it. I've fallen in love with the scene. I'm immersed in it. I have the wind, in my hair. I can smell the smells. I can see everything vividly in a way that you can't do in a photograph. And so this one, this is a very famous place in Dartmoor National Park, which is near where I live. And on the right is a very famous monument. It's called Haytor. And you can't really get the scale of it from this little tiny picture. But my dog and I did a huge hike up to Haytor, and it's a huge incline. It takes a while to get up there. So before I did the painting, I took her on a huge hike all the way to the top, and then a huge hike down, and then she was tired. So I had just a tiny little pochade box in my car. I kind of drove to an area with the wind and, rolled the window down and was painting. That one I painted in my car, looking at this famous monument that we had just walked. And it was just marvelous. And midway through, there are wild cows and wild sheep and wild ponies in the moors. And so these cows just went ambling right by the car. I didn't even notice them. I was so immersed in it. But this painting is one of the ones where it just came together really quickly. I would say I spent only about an hour and a half to 2 hours on this particular one.
Really beautiful. I love the way that the purples move through, right?
Yeah.
So they move you from the back down to the front or vice versa. And there's a lot of light in it. I love it. Yeah.
Thanks.
And you have
no
sense of how big it is at all. I mean, you have a sensation that it is larger probably than it is. So that is really, so let me ask you about the difference between your handling of your media from watercolor to the oil paint. Because your watercolor, which I see you also do an ink drawing first, or what?
The watercolors really they're just sketchbook drawings, the ones that are in this exhibit. I think that drawing practice is essential for any artist. I love drawing. Practicing drawing to me is like doing stretches before exercise. So this style or these paintings just really are me focusing on composition and drawing first. So I start all these in pencil. They're pencil drawings first. Then I go in with ink, and then watercolor. So they're line and wash. And this one that you have up right now, Bridgetown, that's one of the first ones. And I think I've progressed a bit. I was very simple in the early days, not really putting much time at all into the watercolor, having the focus be more on composition and drawing. As I've continued doing these drawings, I'm more immersed in the watercolor and getting that better, getting the value better in the watercolor, not relying as much on the drawing. But I love them both for different reasons. Oil painting, in some ways, it's more work because you have to get the gear out. But in a lot of ways, it's easier. And then sometimes I find, conversely, sometimes I find that I just want to do a sketch in a watercolor because that feels easier on that particular day. I find for me, I was trained as an oil painter. Watercolor is not something I've ever taken a course in. I think it shows for any real watercolorist looking at my work. They would probably have a lot to say. So I just try to keep it what it is. Just try to be honest with it and explore different techniques. I've got to say the paper on my watercolors in the exhibit as well, it's not good paper. It's just, it's all of these are done in a moleskin sketchbook. One of these. And the paper is not cotton. I've since learned that, there's just a world of difference in what you can do with watercolor when you're using a really good ground. So using 100% cotton, which is, I'm still kind of like, I want to finish this sketchbook. I still have a few drawings to do in there. And then I've purchased already 100% cotton sketchbooks that I plan to use exclusively. And if I do a loose watercolor and ink, I do use cotton only, because you can see, like, I just get stuck, not to criticize my own work, but just, I'll put the sky down and it just, I won't be able to move the paint in the same way. So I look at my watercolors, I see a million things I want to change, but for me, they're just, again, I want them to just be a lighthearted expression of a moment. Yes. And not too married to technique.
So even in this one, I love the diagonals that you use in the work, because it really impacts, to me, impacts the way I receive it, and I think also that even though, it's not the best paper, you really get your point across. So let me ask you, doing the landscape and the plein air and the watercolors, and so is there anything that you are trying to say with your work that is sort of that you would like us to know, that is like beyond the painting itself, say?
That's a really good question, Cynthia. For me, I feel that I want to record moments in time. And that really drives my work. Now, I grew up, and you did as well, many people watching this will have been in the same era, in a time where conceptual art was considered true art. The realism of the older days was considered, great art at that time, but we've moved on. The phrase is often bandied about, like, anybody can draw, a face or a building. And I grew up with that, and I internalized that for a long time. I found professionally as well, especially teaching at universities, that idea of, if you are a realist, you're not to be taken seriously. So, in other words, like, what are you saying? What does your art mean? How are you pushing boundaries? And I've always found, as an artist and as a teacher, that you have to learn the basics first. So for me, I've always had this kind of obsession with becoming as good at craft as I could, and making sure that my students had the tools to understand craft, and then they can go off and do whatever they want to do, but they know what they're doing. If they're mixing a color, they're mixing it deliberately. Or if they see a color and like, oh, I want to put this color somewhere, they can do it. Or if they want to draw a scene, for instance, of, houses and people, they know how to do that. And so for me, I'm kind of digressing a bit here, but to kind of steer it back towards that question, discovering this plein air movement, and it is a movement, especially in the US, not as much probably worldwide as well, but it was like finding my tribe for me. These are people who are painting and drawing the landscape, and they're not trying to do much more than be storytellers of a moment. And that's not to say that they don't play with materials and do different things. They do. There are many wonderful artists who are just doing incredible work and pushing boundaries. But for me, I want to record the world that I see. And I think we take for granted that things are always going to be the way they are. And things are changing all the time. I'm sitting here in my studio, my little top floor studio in my house, and there are all these beautiful hills. Like, you can't see them, but that's my view as I'm talking to you. I'm looking at these hills, and these hills are in danger of a development, an impending danger. They may not be there in 10 years. And that's the case all over the world. So I especially want to record these things that I'm seeing and do them in a way that isn't just a photograph, but that kind of convey the feelings that I have about them. So I'm trying to be a bit loose and be maybe a little bit romantic, not sappy, but just to record these buildings and these hills and vistas the way that I feel about them, and put that down. And oftentimes I'll leave out cars or things that date something, because I think these buildings, especially in this particular painting, which you have here, they're timeless. They've been there centuries. There are many artists who will put vehicles in, and that I completely respect that. I'm really drawn to architecture. I wanted to be an architect when I was younger. I didn't have the confidence to really explore that. But one of my hobbies as a young girl was just, I would buy architecture books and I would just pour through them and study the floor plans. And I just love buildings. So I'll put people in, I'll put animals in, but I try to steer away from cars. I'll even occasionally I'll put in like power lines and things like that. But I'm not somebody who's drawn to the industrial landscape. I'm really drawn to architecture and landscape, animals, people. Those are the things that move me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the photograph versus the painting, the plein air, because I agree with you that photograph does not impart any kind of emotional or kind of spiritual sensation of one's relationship to the land. To me, that's my, we showed a bunch of photographers last year, I think it was last year, and I learned a lot from them because they were all really different.
Yeah.
But still, to see like this painting and to have a photograph of this painting, I think, is a world of difference in one's response to the site.
Yeah, there are many amazing photographers doing things that are far beyond my expertise. And I love photography. I personally, my medium is drawing and painting. My media are drawing and painting. I'm able to tell a story through those things. I'm able to impart just my feelings better in that form. So yeah, I love the freshness, the timelessness, especially of oil painting. And for me, the thing that I really love about plein air paint, I've never loved painting as much as I do since I moved to England. Really, it's just been a real awakening and a period of discovery for me. Just having the space to delve into these things, the endlessly inspirational landscape. Not that I don't find inspiration in the US, I do as well, but this is just where I discovered plein air painting. So it speaks to me, it resonates in a different way. For me, because I really espouse technique, before plein air painting, I think I put too much thinking into my work for my own good. And I would often make things too stiff as a result of it. And, you know, when you only have a few hours to complete a painting, something's got to give. So I can't be as detailed and as perfect as I want to be. And I think it's made me a better artist. That also being the difference between painting or drawing from a photograph versus real life is you can see everything, and everything looks completely different to your naked eye. I mean, everybody has probably had the experience that they see something and they're like, oh, I've got to take a picture of it. And then the picture just doesn't look anything like what they saw. And I certainly have like rolls of photographs on my camera and on my hard drive of things that just really don't do justice to what real life was like. And I find that I'm able, from painting in the landscape, I can see things better. I can see the shadows. They're more vibrant. I see the differences in color. The composition is stronger. It's not skewed by the lens of a camera. And also, I think it's made me a better artist when I do work from photographs, which I do. You know, the weather's not always great. I don't always have the motivation to want to be outside, but the learning and the information that I gather is able to be transcended from being in the landscape to painting from a photograph. When you do it enough, I kind of know the things that I don't see in a photograph, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so for any artist, I mean, I just really advocate, even if you don't want to be a plein air artist, paint and draw from life, because it will teach you more than any class, really.
I know. I was in Wales a couple of years ago and took hundreds of photographs. And when I look at them, they don't mean anything. Yeah. Being there that they meant something, these scenes meant something. So in closing, I mean, do you think it's important for an artist to have influences? Are there any artists that you think would be helpful to someone who's like getting into beginning plein air painting or landscape painting, that they might be helpful? Or is it really the doing, you know?
Well, I mean, you know me, I'm a teacher, so I advocate teaching and learning, and I'm still always learning as well. I have many people who I will buy their videos or sign up for, I haven't signed up for any classes recently, but there is an artist who I really love. Her name is Kathy Odom, and with the pandemic, she did some online demos. She did a series of 8 online demos in real time where she was just painting and talking about her process and her colors. And for me, that is just, you know, continuously learning, no matter how good you are, is going to help you become a better artist. Charlie Hunter is another artist who I think is just incredible. I mean, there are lists of modern contemporary artists who people can choose to take a workshop with or buy a video from, if they specifically want to learn about plein air painting, then I would say you're in a great time in history, because you have your pick of artists who you can actually take a workshop with or contact or study with. Some of my favorites, Shelby Keefe is another one. She's an artist based in Wisconsin. I love her work. Watercolor artist Charles Peterson, is an older, he's also a Wisconsin artist who I kind of grew up admiring his work. He's not a plein air artist, but he does beautiful landscapes, and he incorporates storytelling into his work. So I like that as well. I think, learn to draw and learn color, however you do that. I noticed a while ago, several years ago really, that many of the artists who I admired the most studied with an artist named Richard Schmid. And he has some books out. They're a bit pricey, but they're worth it. And he's just one of those living legends that people credit with having improved their work. So I would just say, get out there, go on Instagram, find artists, type in plein air artists, look for somebody whose work moves you, and then see if you can study with them, see if you can buy a video of theirs, see if you can study with somebody they studied with if they don't teach. I mean, that's often very helpful as well. But again,
I want everyone to know that you yourself are an extraordinary teacher, because I witnessed what she did with students in the art department at SUNY Geneseo, which was astounding. I'm sorry I missed taking a class with you myself. It was just amazing. And so in closing, I really want to thank you for spending time with us and sharing your work and your methods, and your insight about painting. And I am so looking forward to your exhibit, which will be on the Lederer online gallery, hosted via Flickr. There'll be a link on the gallery's webpage to the exhibit. And I hope that you get a lot of responses to it. Your work deserves it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm sorry we weren't able to do our live exhibit, but this will reach more people, so that's nice as well.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back with another exhibit later in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't want to say it, but all the paintings you showed were like my least favorite.